We got a little bit carried away and bought both the Mavic 2 Pro and the Mavic 2 Zoom when they came out. We just couldn't decide between these two cameras, so we bought them both. Now I can tell you they are both absolutely fantastic. The build quality, the performance, the maneuverability for cinematic control, everything about them is great. Really, we are big fans. But we're going to sell the Mavic 2 Zoom. We don't need both these drones and we love the Mavic 2 Pro. We're going to get into that in a little bit in this video, and maybe you can learn a little from our conclusions and our experiences depending on how they relate to you. So let's get into that. Hello, my name is Stewart and welcome to Drone Film Guide, the channel where we learn to fly like filmmakers. Now, much as we're going to get a little bit bogged down in all the details of these two drones, the bottom line is it's what you do with it that counts. All these drones that DJI are making at the moment are fantastic, so with that in mind, if you want to actually learn how to use them properly and create some beautiful cinematography, we have an 8-hour drone cinematography masterclass that takes you from drone owner to drone pilot to drone cinematographer in the most enjoyable, informative, cinematic way possible. We really think you'll find it interesting if you want to create some beautiful storytelling shots with your drones. So check out the link in the description below. There's a discount code embedded. I think you'll find it very, very interesting. Okay, let's crack on and look at the differences between these two drones. In the same way there's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all camera that suits everyone's needs perfectly, there's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all drone. So we have to identify what our requirements are and what our expectations are before we start making judgments about drones. Our expectations and our requirements are for a high-quality camera that we can create nice cinematic moves with. Now, both these drones are identical in every way apart from the camera, so they both give you fantastic maneuverability, fantastic cinematic control. They're just tremendous in that respect. They are, after all, an evolution of the Mavic Pro, which is already a fantastic product, so we knew they were going to be good. So the question is entirely about the differences in the camera. With that in mind, let's take a quick look at the technical differences between the two cameras, and we'll talk about the implications in more detail shortly. The Mavic 2 Pro has a 20 megapixel 1-inch sensor, the Mavic 2 Zoom a 12 megapixel 1/2.3 inch sensor. Combine that with the 10-bit color of the Mavic 2 Pro, which is available in D-Log-M and Hybrid Log Gamma at the H.265 codec, and you have the main difference there in that camera. 10-bit color is not available in the Mavic 2 Zoom. Both the cameras have 8-bit color available to you at H.264, but interestingly the Mavic 2 Pro does not give you a D-Cine-like profile at H.264. The field of view is the other area where we see a big difference. On the Mavic 2 Zoom, obviously it has an optical zoom function taking you from 24mm to 48mm, but in terms of functionality and creative opportunity, the Mavic 2 Pro comes a pretty close second, because not only do we get the 28mm wide angle, but we also get a so-called high quality, or what I call a narrow field of view, at approximately 40mm. One other difference worth mentioning is that the Mavic 2 Zoom gives you the rather excellent fun Dolly zoom vertigo effect quick shot mode, where you can get some really powerful effects, and it is a lot of fun. That being said, I don't think it's a particularly strong reason just to buy this drone, because first of all you can replicate that effect quite successfully in post-production with any drone, and secondly, in the fullness of time, we're going to get a little bit sick of this effect. So I'm not sure that's the reason to go out and buy a drone specifically for that. So we'll put that one aside for now. If picture quality doesn't matter to you, or you're not quite at the stage in your growth as a filmmaker whereby you're really working with your picture in post-production and you're filming things slightly underexposed to protect your highlights so that you can draw them back in post, if all of that is kind of mumbo-jumbo to you, then in all honesty, you can do perfectly well with your Mavic Air or your Phantom 3 or your Phantom 4 or whatever it is you already have, a Mavic Pro. There's no need to upgrade. We're talking here about camera performance, and if you're not in the position to take advantage of that, then it's absolutely pointless paying up to get that camera performance. Given that we've been doing this a little while, we do feel in a position to take advantage of camera performance, and as such, provided the camera on this Mavic 2 Pro lived up to expectations, then this was always going to be the winner for us in hindsight. Now, I can tell you, if you've seen our Mavic 2 Pro and Zoom review, the camera on this thing does live up to expectations. It's the first drone camera that we've come across, at least, that we would even contemplate putting the ISO above 100. You can go all the way up to 800 without introducing unbearable noise into the shadows. In the other drones, you can't really touch the ISO, quite frankly. It has to stay locked down on 100. You can underexpose images, which means you can much better protect your highlights, clouds, white dresses, whatever the case may be, the froth on the tops of waves. These are all things that you want to protect. You want to retain as much detail in that as possible, so you don't get that horrible kind of blown out look on your highlights. The consequence is the rest of your image might be quite underexposed. And on the other drones, in our experience, we were never able to recover those midtones and shadows in post without kind of destroying the image by introducing loads of noise. This one you can. The light gathering capability of that 1-inch sensor, the 10-bit functionality, it allows you to do all of that. It's really, really fantastic. We have to talk about some of the costs that go hand in hand with all those lovely picture benefits. The first one is that you have to shoot D-Log-M in the H.265 codec. D-Log-M's lovely, it's actually quite easy to color grade, but you just stretch out the contrast, add in some saturation, and you've got a good starting point for your grade. But the H.265 codec is a nightmare. Again, referring back to our review, we have pretty high spec, although albeit slightly old MacBook Pro, and it's it just can barely play back the 4K footage, so you have to proxy it, and it's a right pain in the backside if I'm honest. Now, added to that, there's barrel distortion on the 4K footage wide field of view on the H.265 D-Log-M profile. Now, it's like looking through a kind of mild version of a GoPro lens. You can fix it very, very easily in post with a plugin, but it's just another step. So if you're not at the stage where you're going to be dealing with barrel distortion, where you have a computer that's going to be able to handle this H.265 codec, where you can be bothered stretching out your contrast and adding saturation and then doing a color grade, if you don't want to be dealing with any of that, then this is absolutely not the right drone for you, and that is fine. This is not a case of, oh, you're not good enough for this drone. It's just a case of, let's talk about the other drawback. This is quite expensive. It's more expensive than the Mavic 2 Zoom. It's a lot more expensive than a Mavic Air. It's definitely more expensive than the Phantom 3 that you're still flying with, or the Phantom 4, or the Mavic Pro. So there's a lot of reasons not to buy this if you're not quite ready for it, interested in it, or whatever the case may be. Now, as it happens, we are, and we absolutely love it. Let's talk about field of view. The zoomability of this lens from 24mm to 48mm is, after all, the main selling point of this drone, and it's fantastic. When you're used to just shooting on a full wide angle, let's say 24mm for the sake of argument, being able to get closer to subjects, being able to enjoy a slight kind of parallax effect when you're rotating around a subject, it's brilliant. The fact that they've added that is just so great to see that as a development in these consumer/prosumer level drones. Nothing bad to say about that at all. However, since we're doing a comparison, this drone gives you the wide angle field of view of 28mm. It also gives you a so-called high quality field of view, what I would call a narrower field of view, that equates to roughly 40mm. So here we have a 28mm lens and a 40mm lens. Here we have a 24mm to 48mm lens. Now, of course, this is more flexible in terms of zooming through the range, and it gets you slightly closer in, but nonetheless, given that this doesn't have a zoom lens, in effect, it gives you two focal lengths, one of which is zoomed. That's pretty useful, and that does a pretty big job of eating into the main selling point of this drone. Added to that, because the picture quality is so high, you can punch in on that 40mm shot and get all the way up to 80mm by doing a 200% post-production punch-in, and you get a really nice, crisp 1080p image doing that. When you digitally zoom on this past 48mm, and you can only do that in 1080p mode, the picture quality starts to erode quite quickly. So if anything, a post-production zoom on the narrow field of view on this drone is higher quality than a digital zoom on this drone. So, given that the zoomability, for want of a better word, is pretty much the only reason for buying this drone, I'd say you get 80% of that functionality, plus all the benefits of 10-bit color and all that kind of stuff that I discussed previously. So again, that's a pretty strong reason, for us at least, to keep this one and sell this one. So should you even buy one of these drones? Well, of course, it completely depends on your personal situation, what you need it for, and what drone you already have. In our case, we had a Phantom 4 standard that we bought 2 years ago, and we got fantastic results from that. Absolutely love that drone, but it's a little bit bigger, it's a little bit bulkier, heavier, all that kind of stuff. So along came the Mavic Air this year, promises of 100 megabits per second video that kind of was a match or arguably an improvement for the video on the Phantom 4. So we bought that, a tiny, fantastic little nimble drone, just stick it in your back pocket. In reality, in our opinion, the picture quality on the Phantom 4 is far superior to the Mavic Air, so that was a little bit of a disappointment for our needs. With the benefit of hindsight, we could have waited and just got one of these. Anyway, now we have one of these and we're very happy. Hello. So we sell the Mavic Air, we sell the Phantom 4, and as you know, we're selling this Mavic 2 Zoom. You need to make a decision based on your own requirements and your own expectations, but hopefully some of that information gets you a little bit further to understanding what it is you need from a drone and whether one of these Mavic 2s is going to get you there. Anyway, enough chat from me. As always, stay in touch, leave your comments below. There's no right or wrong. You're not an idiot if you have a Mavic Zoom, you're not an idiot if you have a Mavic Pro. We're just talking about drones at the end of the day. It's not, some kind of life-changing decision, so let's not get stressed about it. And stay in touch, there'll be lots more content coming soon, and we'll see you next time here on Drone Film Guide.